Hello, I'm Elliot Perkins, and this is a video about improving in blindfolded solving. So, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Elliot. I main pyramids and blindfolded events, but I'm very, very new to blind events. I only got into them in December, and they are already probably my next best events. I've gone in 4 months or in 4 or 5 months from not knowing how to solve a 3x3 blindfolded to being sub 50, like sub 630 on 4 blind, which is mid, but whatever, and having multiple 18 out of 18s in multi-blind. I don't claim to be very good at blind. In fact, I still consider myself fairly mediocre, but I have been told my improvement is slightly ridiculous. So I've had a couple people ask me to make this video, so I'm making it. This is going to be my tips on how to improve at blindfolded and some of the stuff I've done to go from bad to a lot less bad in a short amount of time. Just a few more disclaimers or things I want to mention. I'm only going to be talking about 3 blind, 4 blind, and multi-blind because I don't like 5 blind and I'm not good at it and I have nothing interesting to add about it. But I would imagine all of the concepts from 4 blind that I talk about or ideas that I talk about, as this video will be more idea heavy rather than concept heavy, at least the way I am planning it to go. I think all of these ideas can be applied from 4 blind to 5 blind if you care about 5 blind, which I don't at the moment. The other thing is I'm not going to be talking about 3 style because I don't know it yet. I will learn it, but I don't know it. So if you know 3 style, then you're further along than I am in at least the execution phase of blind solving. The first thing I want to talk about is a mentality thing. Blindfolded should be treated like a sprint, not a marathon, because, and this only applies to 4 and 3 blind, in my opinion. I think multi-blind is different because the objective isn't speed, it's accuracy. Multi-blind is a marathon. 3 blind and 4 blind are sprints, and I think too many people treat them like marathons. I see a lot of people that are first getting their into learning how to do blindfolded. They're more worried about getting a success than getting a fast success. And I think that holds a lot of people back and stagnates them at, say, a minute 30 for 3 blind forever, or even slower, or they're at a point where they never get to the point where they care about speed in 4 blind, which to me is silly because your result is based on speed. So I think that you have to be okay with DNFing. You're going to DNF a lot. My 3 blind success rate is bad. It's maybe 35%. It's higher for 4 blind and even higher for M blind, but you can't be afraid of DNFs. You're going to DNF a lot, especially at the start. When I started, my success rate was 10% or something. Probably a little better, but it was bad. And I know a lot of people when they start out have very high success rates. And although that makes it look like you're doing well, I don't think that's the case. If you're only worried about succeeding, I don't think you're going to get much faster because you're more focused on making sure the cube is solved and making sure it's solved quickly. Blindfolded is the only event that is time-based where people seem to disregard time, and I think that's really, really silly. So I think you should be trying to go fast, and a few things you can do to actually implement this mentality into yourselves besides just having that mentality is it's just really basic stuff, right? I set up this case because it's just 2 good examples. This is old pocket corners, right? This is what I use. If you're just starting out with blind, you would probably execute it like this. You would move this down, you would do your modified Y perm, and you move it up. And then you have G, so you're going to move it like that, and like that. And you're probably going to execute it at about that speed because you don't want to DNF, right? The thing is, if you know 3 blind, you've been solving 3x3 for a long time probably, and you can, even if you don't think you can turn at full speed and not mess up without looking at the cube, or at least you should be able to. So you should do that whole sequence fast, right? Like that. And that was pretty decent. We got those corners done kind of quick. But the algs were bad, right? So another thing you can do to implement this sprint mentality is to learn better algorithms, because what you do for sprint events, which credit to Keenan Darkins for giving me this. Like when I first started, a little tangent, when I first started practicing blind and improving relatively quickly, like within the first couple days, Keenan's like, well, yeah, you're a sprint event main. Of course you're improving fast at 3 blind. And I go, that doesn't make any sense. He's like, yeah, 3 blind's just a sprint event. And then the more I thought about it, the more I thought he was right. So I did what I do with all my sprint events, which are the other events that I care about. I optimized some of my algs, right? So just to give a couple examples, there's a ZBLL that can solve the N target. It looks like this. It's just a standard COL algorithm. And it's a lot faster, especially with N, because you either don't cancel moves and be inefficient with your setup, or you cancel moves and could maybe mess it up. At least I'm bad at canceling moves. So you could do something like this, right? You could just do this ZBLL, which swaps these 2 edges, which is what you need for old Pachman, and it solves that corner. Another little tactic you can use is for the D, G, and V stickers. You can set them up to this spot and do U2 J perm U, which is a lot faster than doing an awkward setup like that and then like canceling into modified Y perm. So like for G, the whole sequence, or for G right here, the whole sequence just looks like this, which is a lot faster than that, right? Like that was probably a half a second, and a half a second is a lot in an event that takes under a minute. So yeah, just things like that. You should turn fast, you should know good algs, and you shouldn't be afraid of DNFing. My next tip is to play by your own rules during memorization. The easiest way but there are rules. You should have rules, but they should be your own. I think just like, there are 2 rules you have to follow with memorization in order to be fast. That's using CEEC, so memorizing corners, then edges, then executing it in the opposite direction. And using, for 3 blind only, using audio memo for edges. I've also moved to using audio memo for my X centers in 4 blind, but I don't know how common that is, or, you know, just, yeah, I don't know how common that is, but that's my own rule, right? And you should play by your own rules as long as you have them. The easiest way to create your own rules is with a letter pair spreadsheet. I made one, and you should also make one. It only takes about an hour and a half, at least. That's how long it took me. You can use the website colpi.net, colpi.net, to come up with words for pairs you don't know. Although I found that I don't actually follow my spreadsheet perfectly. It was like at all. It was more just a good exercise in thinking of letter pairs and made me a lot quicker at doing it. But I set up an example of one of my favorite letter pairs. And in 3 blind, this is a moot point because I just use audio, but for multi-blind, I obviously use images. And so this is OI, right? And I couldn't think of a good word for OI for a really long time. So I just thought, like, what is my audio for OI? It's OI, right? And then I thought, who says OI? And I was like, oh, an Australian guy. So that's one of my rules for myself, right? You can associate things with letter pairs that don't necessarily have the letters in them. That's a rule I came up with myself. You don't have to use that rule. You should come up with your own rules. But for OI, I just memo an Australian guy, like a really stereotypical one. Like he's got like, I don't know, he just like looks really Australian, and he's got like a dingo or something. I don't know. He's just an Australian guy, because oi, that's like a Australian accent type of deal. That sounds really stupid, saying that out loud. But yeah, so that's like And I found that generally when you have weird pairs like that, you remember them so much better. Like I've done 6 multi-blind attempts this week, and I think 5 of them have had OI, and I've never DNF'd OI because an Australian guy, like a super stereotypical Australian guy, is just so memorable to me, even though that doesn't necessarily, it's not obvious that that's OI, but if you know it is, then it works, right? Another thing that another like weird memo rule that I've come up with myself, let me just set up an example, is for the letter K when it starts in a pair. I found that I don't really like a lot of words with K, and there aren't a lot of good ones. There are some good ones like KQ. I just use like Ash Ketchum. But, and that's a nice one. But one of my favorite things to do, and it's also super memorable, I never forget these because it's so ridiculous, is I just imagine, like, I just use whatever my C, like, I just replace the K with C and make a word out of that, but then imagine that thing killing somebody, because K is kill, right? Like K, that's what, I don't know, it makes sense in my head. So like this one's my favorite one. This is KN, that's like a killer Canadian, because CN is a Canadian. And you might think that that would get all jumbled with, oh, I might forget that he's killing somebody, but I never do. So that's another one of my rules. So that was a long tangent, but the point being is just because something's unconventional doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. It means that you should try to do it. Wow, that was a terrible voice crack. I'm sorry you had to experience that. You should try to do it, and you should keep doing it unless it's bad for you. I've found that my 3-blind, especially for multi-blind, my memos are kind of strange. They're not very visual. They're a lot of just like sentences. Like I'll use like different parts of speech that aren't nouns and verbs. Like this is AR, and I literally use the word R, like ARE, and I make a sentence with whatever other words are in there, and it works for me. So you should do things like that. You should experiment, and you're gonna get a lot better because you're getting to know yourself better. And since blind is such a brain heavy event, maximizing things to fit your brain is how you're gonna get better. And kind of to that point, my next tip is going to be to make blind as brainless as possible, which sounds counterintuitive because, like I just said, blind is like a very brain heavy event. Like you do a lot of, like, you rely on your brain a lot rather than maybe other aspects like that you would in other sighted events. Like you don't rely on your eyes at all for half the solve. So your brain works the most efficiently when it's doing the least, obviously. So you want your brain to not do very much. And this means different things for different people, I think. But for me, it's meant going very fast through my memo. Another example of not playing by your own rules, or only playing by your own rules during memo, is I take corners really slow and I make sure I get them right, and then I one-pass edges. I've been told by a lot of people that I shouldn't even worry about one-passing until I know 3-style, but I can one-pass edges on half my solves. And that's something I do to reduce the amount of brain power I use because I don't have to remember things for as long. Another, going back to the letter pair spreadsheet, coming up with pairs really automates things. You don't have to think about what letters correspond to what. You can just do it, and it becomes like it's almost like muscle memory for your brain. Just like I see, let me set up a fun example. Like I'll see, I don't even like trace. I just see this pattern and I'm like, oh, that's AF. That's the Aflac duck. Like, just stuff like that. The more automated stuff becomes, the faster you're gonna be, and the more successes you're gonna get. Because the more work the other thing, it compounds, right? The more work your brain is doing, the more tired you're gonna get, and the less solves you're gonna do. The less solves you're gonna do, the less good you're gonna get because you're practicing less. So I think this is the most important point here that I'm kind of touching on, is to make things brainless, because the more brainless things become, the easier they get and the better you're going to get. My last tip that I'm going to give is the most fun one, in my opinion, and that is to send it. Even if you're not totally confident with your memo, if it's time to put on your blindfold, it's time to put on your blindfold. This is going back to the sprint event part. You want to be fast. You'd be surprised how much you can recall on the fly without thinking you've memorized it during your actual memo. I did my 4-blind PR is a 6:49, which is very mediocre for me now because I've been practicing 4-blind. But I would say I averaged minimum 15 seconds better than that. But at the time, it was really good for me. It was close to overall PB. And I had already had a success that round. And I remember going into the solve like, well, I'm just going to send it. Like, I'm going to, review less. And hopefully it should work out. And I'm going to turn fast and, hopefully get a good time. And it totally worked. But I remember at the end of my memo, I was so sure I was going to DNF because I literally couldn't recall like half my wings. And during my attempt, I was able to recall half my wings, or that half of the wings that I didn't think I could recall. So I think you should send it, and I think you should trust yourself. Especially officially, I feel like, at least for me, my fight or flight almost like kicks in when I'm doing blind, and it's just like I kind of see red and remember everything, like especially for 4-blind and M-blind. 3-blind, my official success rate's trash. But for 4-blind and M-blind, especially when I'm competing officially, like I surprise myself with how much I'm able to remember with insufficient review. So that's kind of taught me that it's okay to send it, because remember, you're going for speed and you're okay with DNFs, and that's how you're going to improve. So the more you send it, the more comfortable you're going to be with sending it, and the better you're going to get. So yeah. Anyway, thanks for listening to me rant about blind solving for 15, 20 minutes, however long this was. I don't know if any of this made any sense or was even a little bit coherent or helpful, but I hope it was. Hopefully you didn't feel too fooled. You probably went into this video thinking I was going to give more concrete tips, and this is mostly mentality stuff, but as blind's a pretty mental event, I think that's what's important. So those are the tips I have, and truthfully, I haven't done anything. I've improved ridiculously fast, and I haven't done anything out of the ordinary in terms of how I actually solve. I think I've just had good mentalities with blind solving, and I think that's what's actually helped me improve fast. So I wanted to share some of that with you, and hopefully you can adopt some of these mentalities and also improve really quickly, because contrary to popular belief, blind is not very difficult, and you can get pretty fast pretty quick. So if you have any questions, I will answer every single one, so you should ask them. Bye.